Jonathan now turned to Angela. "I dare say Mary has been telling you all about our woes," he said. Then, as Angela assented, went on, "This Mrs. Quinn is shameless, absolutely shameless. She is peddling the most egregious and dangerous nonsense to people who really ought to know better than to listen to it, although, of course, many visitors do find the attractions of Italy so seductive that they lose their heads for the duration of their trip, and so they are particularly susceptible to this kind of foolishness." "I suppose that's true," said Angela, who was still no clearer in her mind as to what the Ainsleys expected her to do about the problem. "It most certainly is true," said Jonathan. "I have been here for several years now, and am ashamed to say that in that time I have seen normally decent English people behaving in the most disgraceful manner, and getting up to things they would not dream of doing at home." "Oh, yes?" said Angela, intrigued. She waited with interest for further details, but Jonathan pursed his lips and went on. "And now Mrs. Quinn is taking advantage of this temporary loss of sense to induce people to embrace the dark arts. Yes, for that is what I will call them, dear," he said to his wife, who had been about to speak. "They are neither more nor less than dark arts. And of course, as I said, it is all nonsense. Why, it's simply absurd to think that one can really summon the spirits of the dead by rapping on a table. The Quinns are committing fraud, and that is the truth of it." "I don't believe in spiritualism myself," said Angela, "but if they are doing it fraudulently, as you say, then dark arts hardly seems to be the most appropriate description for it, since they are not actually calling upon any supernatural forces." "They are meddling with things that ought not to be meddled with," said Jonathan, who was becoming rather agitated. Mary hastened to intervene. "Well, dear, Angela is here now, and she's promised to help," she said. Angela had done no such thing, but saw that she was about to be driven into a corner, and prepared to resign herself to the inevitable. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she said. "Why, expose her, of course," said Mary, as though it were obvious. "But, pardon me, is she actually doing anything illegal?" said Angela. "I am not clear on the law as it relates to mediums and spiritualists, especially here in Italy, but I can only imagine that many of Mrs. Quinn's clients part willingly with their money in return for the chance to participate in a séance. I don't suppose half of them really believe that they are about to speak to their dead Uncle Henry, or whomever it may be. I have always assumed that most people who pay for the services of a medium treat it as one might a fortune-teller in a fair-ground, a harmless diversion for an hour or so, but nothing to be taken too seriously." "I cannot take the thing as lightly as you do, Angela," said Jonathan. "But if it were only that, I should be less disturbed. However, I firmly believe that Mrs. Quinn is actively defrauding some of her more gullible clients out of their money." "Oh?" said Angela. "Yes," said Jonathan. "I have heard indirectly of several instances recently in which people have handed over large amounts of money to the Quinns, or have promised to remember them in a will. I believe Miss Frome, for example, pays Mrs. Quinn regular sums in the form of a retainer for her services, which is simply absurd in my view. But then, of course, she is terribly rich, and has always been rather eccentric in her views on established religion. Then there is Mrs. Rowe, who was quite bedridden. Mrs. Quinn visited her frequently all last winter, and, I am sure, made every effort to insinuate herself into the old woman's confidence. I know of this because Mrs. Rowe's son came out to visit her a month or so ago, and was most dismayed to find out what had been happening. He came to see me about it, and said that his mother was planning to leave Mrs. Quinn a significant amount of money in her will, and was there anything he could do about it? If he had cared enough about her to visit her more often himself, then perhaps she wouldn't have done it in the first place, said Mary reasonably. True enough, said Jonathan, but he is her only son, and surely deserves to have some say in the matter. And then, of course, there is Raymond Sheridan, who really ought to know better, given that he is not a weak-minded old woman, but rather a perfectly sensible man in all other respects. Who is Raymond Sheridan? Said Angela. He lives here in Stresa with his wife, said Jonathan. They are a very pleasant couple. He, in particular, is very friendly and a valuable part of the little English community we have here. They frequently hold large parties and gatherings at their home, and we have benefited from their hospitality many times. Oh, yes, agreed Mary.